The story kicks off in a chaotic world where monsters are terrorizing everything. These creatures are the enemies of humanity and have wiped out entire civilizations. To fight back, there are two paths humans can choose from. The first is the path of magic, using the mana that flows through the air. By doing so, they become mages capable of pulling off supernatural feats. A mage then unleashes his powerful spell against a red dragon. However, the creature doesn't seem to care and gets super ticked off. The magic attacks just bounce off its hide without causing any damage. Seeing magic fail, a warrior gets ready to take the lead in the fight. The dragon seizes the opportunity to dive down and attack the humans on the ground. And so, the second path is revealed. The swordsman with his superhuman strength. But his sword shatters the moment it hits the monster's tough scales. The warrior gets frustrated, because you can only follow one of these paths. Suddenly, a fiery explosion blasts the dragon square in the chest. The creature then retaliates with an even more devastating fire attack. Everyone is terrified, realizing that choosing one path can leave you powerless. The fighters are thrown back by the blast as a new figure emerges. Chaos spreads, and everyone is sent flying by the dragon's power. Amidst the destruction, our main character appears, sword in hand. He then flies towards the dragon, ready for the final showdown. The dragon is furious at the challenge and faces our hero head on. In the creature's eye, you can see the reflection of our guy about to strike. With a single strike, the battle is over, and our protagonist emerges victorious. The other warriors are stunned by how quickly it all went down. After all, he's someone who has mastered his path and become a sword saint. His name is Oscar, the sword saint, one of the strongest on the continent. The survivors thank him for his help, surprised to see him there. But Oscar just tells them to leave the rest to him and get out of there. Everyone is left speechless by our hero's imposing presence. As he walks away, a family reunites, happy to be safe. Oscar then reflects that he chose the sword over magic and made it to the top. Just then, he sees a man showing a little girl a magic trick. Or MC is mesmerized by the glow of the magic he had given up. He knows he's become an inspiration to many people with his sword, just like the little girl, who is staring in awe at the magic before her. Oscar remembers when he was a kid and was just as enchanted by magic. He admits that the longing for magic he felt in his childhood is still there. A flashback begins, showing our hero training in the mountains. From a young age, he dedicated himself completely to training with the sword. Other people would watch him train, seeing his dedication and effort. Two apprentices watch the training, and one of them mentions how the master never misses a day. He explains that the area used to be flat before our hero started training there, and that the intense daily training ended up sinking the ground and creating a crater. All while Oscar continues his training with a completely focused expression. The apprentice's jaw drops at the story and the sheer strength of his master. Suddenly, his friend points to the scroll in his hand, reminding him of the message. The boy then calls out to his master, interrupting the intense training. He runs over and hands him a letter that came straight from the capital for our hero. Oscar reads the contents, and the apprentice, worried by his reaction, asks if it's bad news. Our hero then says it's just a medal for taking down the dragon and grumbles a bit. The apprentice gets all awkward and says only his master would complain about something like that. After all, he's fed up with politics, and you can't even get a decent training session in at the capital. The boy then realizes just how much his master truly loves swords. Our protagonist just looks to the side with a thoughtful expression. He then smiles and says it's not like he really loves them that much, and reveals that he chose the sword because his dad, a sword master, told him to. The apprentice is completely confused by this revelation and doesn't get it at all. Oscar continues, explaining that he didn't choose this path of his own free will. He adds that he's actually jealous of his apprentice for having talent. The boy then says he joined the academy because he wanted to, but he's afraid of losing his talent. He confesses that sometimes he wonders if he can still become a mage now. It's explained that mages and swordsmen use energy circuits in their bodies. However, the two powers are opposites, and mixing them can wreck your body. That's why the choice between being a mage or a swordsman defines a person's life. Oscar then advises him to just swing his sword if he's worried, because that's what he did, and it's how he ended up where he is today. The apprentice is motivated by the advice and agrees with his master. Later that night, our hero is lying in bed, lost in thought. He reflects on the advice he gave, but knows he has no room to talk. His apprentice's words about him having a talent for the sword echo in his mind. Then, he wonders what his own talent for magic might have been. Oscar repeats the advice he gave the young man to himself. Suddenly, our protagonist's eyes fly open as he hears a strange noise. A moment later, a massive explosion goes off right outside his house. The fire consumes the building while cloaked figures watch from a distance. A group of mysterious mages approaches, clearly up to no good. One of them asks if the job is done, but another tells him not to let his guard down. From within the flames, our hero leaps out, surprising the enemies. He realizes they're mages, and powerful ones at that, given the attack they pulled off. And our protagonist immediately wonders which one of them is the leader. The leader then orders the attack, and all the mages ready their electric spells. However, our protagonist stays calm, holding his sword, ready for a fight. Oscar skillfully dodges the multiple lightning bolts, flying in his direction. In a swift move, he closes the distance and strikes one of the mages with his blade. But our hero is completely shocked by an unexpected move from the enemies. They've captured his apprentice and are using him as a hostage, threatening him with ice. The young man is gagged and terrified, with a cold blade to his neck. Our guy asks what they want, and the leader reveals they're after his life. Oscar is confused, as he can't remember doing anything to be hated this much. The mage then gives a wicked smile and says it's obvious he wouldn't remember, and reveals they can't forgive his talent for the sword, and for magic too. Our protagonist is totally lost and asks what he's talking about. The leader ignores him and says he doesn't have to meet his end there, threatening the apprentice. Seeing the situation, the young man desperately yells his master's name and tells him not to worry because he's just a nobody and is ready to go. Determination fills our hero's eyes upon hearing this. He understands the situation and grips his sword even tighter. To everyone's surprise, Oscar says that they're absolutely right, but he claims their plan has failed and tells them not to underestimate his disciple. The leader of the mages is furious at his audacity and prepares a new attack. The leader then unleashes a shower of ice shards towards our hero. The projectiles fly at high speed, ready to end it all. A moment later, a large cloud of dust rises from the point of impact. The mage turns his back, confident that the sword saint is toast. However, he's shocked to feel a cut on his cheek and has no idea what happened. Suddenly, he sees that one of his own men has been hit from behind. Turns out, our hero used his own body as bait to save his apprentice. The leader then says his objective is complete, and they all prepare to flee. They then vanish into a portal of light, leaving Oscar behind. The apprentice runs over in a panic and asks why he did that for him. But our protagonist smiles and says he's a swordsman too, just like him. The young man cries, saying he was ready to go and didn't need to be saved. He then apologizes, but our hero tells him it's not his fault. The boy can't hold back the tears, seeing his master in such a state. Oscar looks at him with a weak smile, calmly accepting his final fate. In his last moments, he remembers his dream of wanting to be a mage, and he finally faces the truth he's been avoiding his whole life. The truth is, our protagonist had always wanted to use magic ever since he was a kid. He only swung his sword to avoid facing that fact and took pride in the honor. But nothing could compare to the thrill he felt whenever he saw magic. Suddenly, our hero wakes up in a forest and reaches his hand toward the sky. He looks at his own hands, confused and with no idea where he is. Our protagonist then realizes he should have been gone for good by now. Looking around, he tries to recognize the place where he appeared, and he soon realizes he's in Eisen, his childhood hometown. Our guy clearly remembers giving his life to save his apprentice. Next to him, he finds a wooden sword and a few letters on the ground. He's surprised to see what's written on those envelopes. They were invitations to the two biggest academies in the kingdom, one for magic and one for swords. At 15 years old, young people receive these invitations to choose their own path. Our protagonist gets lost in thought, holding the letter from the Magic Academy. He then wonders if, by some chance, he has returned to the past, to the time when he was 14 years old, before he became a swordsman. Just then, a shadow appears behind him, and a familiar voice calls his name. It was his father, with a serious expression, asking what he was doing there. Oscar is shocked and turns around to confirm if it's really his dad. He realizes that if he's back in the past, his father would be alive too. However, the man scolds him for being arrogant and neglecting his training. Our hero just lowers his head without saying a single word. After all, he wasn't being arrogant. He was just afraid to reveal his dream. It's revealed that his father was a sword master, which is why he had many disciples. And as his son, our guy naturally learned to fight with him from an early age. His father would praise him with every improvement, but one day, something in Oscar changed forever. He ran excitedly to tell him about the magic he saw, but the reaction wasn't good. His father became furious and said that magic was for the weak, and that his son only needed to worry about swinging his sword and nothing else. Since then, he trained so he wouldn't be abandoned, but the end of it all was tragic. Back in the past, our protagonist now has a new determination in his eyes. He was tired of having an ending like that and wasn't going to repeat his mistakes. In this new life, our hero would finally follow the path he so deeply desired. His father then insists, asking what he was doing instead of training. Oscar looks him in the eye and replies that he stared at a sword enough for one lifetime. The man is completely shocked by his own son's bold response. He then unleashes a powerful aura, and several swords of light appear around him. The pressure from his energy is so intense that even he feels the great impact. The other disciples nearby collapse to the ground, unable to withstand the power. However, our protagonist remains standing, completely calm in the face of the situation. His father doesn't understand how he can be so composed with all this power, but our guy has already lived through all this and is no longer shaken by the pressure. The man stares at him with a serious expression, trying to figure out what's going on. The father then calms down and says it seems his son wasn't just messing around. Oscar just adjusts his clothes, preparing for what would come next. The man praises him and says that if he keeps this up, he could inherit his guild. Suddenly, a few guys show up with not so friendly looks on their faces. His father smiles, pleased with his son's potential, without noticing the others. Our protagonist looks at his father with a thoughtful, distant gaze. A moment later, the guys grab him from behind quite aggressively. They say they were waiting for the academy break just to see him. The leader of the group then says he's going to teach him a thing or two about the sword. Our hero remembers that these guys were also around at this time. They were his training partners, with whom he always fought on his father's orders. But everything changed when they awakened their sword aura at the academy. They then start teaching him as a way to vent their frustrations. Back in the present, the bully challenges him to a fight right there. He then shows off his sword aura, all proud, and tells him to get ready. Oscar knows that the aura creates a power gap that can't be overcome. To everyone's surprise, he turns and starts walking away. With a smile, our hero gives his thanks for everything that's happened up to now. The guy is completely shocked and has no idea what to make of this attitude, and a moment later, our protagonist throws his wooden sword into the water. The bullies mock him for throwing away his sword, calling him a coward. The leader of the group charges forward furiously, saying he's a disgrace to swordsmen. However, our protagonist remains with his back turned, completely still in the face of the threat. He then turns around and reveals he won't be using a sword anymore because he's going to be a mage now. The guy doesn't care and charges with his sword aura activated, ready to attack. However, our guy maintains a calm and serene look without any fear. After all, body reinforcement with sword aura greatly increases speed. But the attack goes right past him, as our hero dodges with incredible ease. Oscar then says that at this rate, his attack will never work. The bully gets furious and says the sword is an extension of the body, not just a weapon. He attacks again, but our protagonist dodges with impressive agility. Our hero realizes that his body is moving on instinct, just like when he used to train. The guy gets desperate, unable to understand how he can't land a single hit. So, our guy seizes the chance for a very quick counter-attack. He uses his hands to deflect the sword and prepares for the final blow. With a simple move, he easily knocks the bully to the ground. The guy is on the floor, unable to believe what just happened. Our protagonist looks down on him with a serious and highly experienced gaze and asks why he threw away his reach against an unarmed opponent. The bully is terrified by the lesson and the enormous difference in their levels. The bully's friends help him up and carry him away from there. Our hero watches them leave and thinks that should keep them away for a while. He then clenches his fist, remembering that in his past life, his father forced him to awaken. To avoid making the same mistake, he decides he'll get mana first this time. With his goal in mind, our protagonist starts walking through the forest. He walks for a bit and wipes the sweat from his face, seemingly looking for a place. Our guy then finds a secluded spot and thinks no one can see him there. A memory surfaces, and he remembers asking a mage how to use magic. He explained how swordsmen use their spirit and asked how mages did it. The girl in the green hat looks thoughtful at the young warrior's question. She was sitting next to some flowers with her watering can and a bucket. The mage then picks up the watering can to use as a practical example and says that for them, magic is a lot like using a watering can on plants. Our protagonist is confused and wonders what a watering can has to do with it. The girl explains that mana exists naturally and fills the entire atmosphere. She then shows that by circulating the mana and using a formula, magic is activated. Back in the present, our hero sits on the large rock to begin meditating. He remembers the mage's words about the mana that fills the environment. Our protagonist believes that if he can see it, he'll be able to pull it inside. With his eyes closed, he concentrates completely on feeling the mana around him. He reflects that swordsmen use their senses to the absolute limit to survive, and even though he's no longer a swordsman, his body still has those memories. So our hero uses his heightened senses to feel the invisible mana. He goes deeper into meditation and begins to feel the flow of energy around him. Suddenly, his eyes snap open as he has finally managed to see everything. Several streams of pink mana are floating around him, and he is amazed. The sight is so incredible that our protagonist is left completely speechless. He then celebrates happily and says that now he just needs to pull the mana inside. But then he stops and wonders how exactly he's going to do that. Just then, our guy notices something strange and looks to the side. He jumps off the rock and goes to investigate what's causing that disturbance. Our hero feels that there's something wrong with that specific spot in the forest. He then starts walking towards the source of that strange sensation. On the way, he passes through an invisible barrier that makes him very suspicious. He also finds it strange that he can't feel any living beings nearby in that area. All of a sudden, the ground shakes, and something lands with great force right in front of him. Dust flies up, and our guy braces himself for whatever it is. A moment later, a giant stone golem appears before his eyes. Oscar is shocked and wonders what a creature like that is doing here. But before he can think of anything, he sees a shadow falling from the sky and gets spooked. A woman with red hair and white clothes lands right in front of our hero. She then raises her hand and asks what he's doing in her workshop. The golem stares at her with red eyes, and she accuses him of trying to steal her research. Our protagonist is still on the ground, with no clue what's going on. The woman threatens him, telling him to think carefully before he speaks if he wants to stay alive. Our protagonist then recognizes the woman and remembers the stories about her. She was a famous hero who fought monsters with a giant golem. Her name is Isabel the Life, forging mage, a legend among mages. Back in the present, our hero is in chains, and definitely didn't expect to meet her like this. Isabel then interrogates him, asking which faction of mages he belongs to. She points her staff at him as a very clear threat for him to talk. A moment later, a red magic circle appears beneath him, ready to be activated. Seeing the situation, our protagonist desperately pleads for her to wait a second. He tries to explain, saying he didn't resist, and that he's not her enemy. The woman stares at him with a serious expression, seeming to consider what he said. But suddenly, she stands up and says it looks like he really wants to get fried. She then prepares to attack, saying goodbye to the nameless mage. Our hero then yells out in desperation, with a somewhat strange smile on his face, and reveals that, for starters, he's not even a mage yet, which leaves her confused. Isabel calls him pathetic, but decides to check his story with her magic. Her eyes glow as she analyzes the energy of our guy in front of her, and she's shocked to realize there's no mana flowing through his circuits. The scene changes, and now the two of them are having tea, as she says she understands the situation. However, Isabel makes it clear that she has no intention of apologizing, and reveals that she became a professor at the academy, but everyone already treats her like an enemy. Oscar is surprised and asks if Isabel really works at the Magic Academy. She confirms, and he sees his chance to learn from her to finally use mana. While the woman drinks her tea, our hero calls out to her with great determination. Our protagonist then stands up, ready to make his big request. He begs her to please teach him how to infuse his body with mana. However, Isabel coldly refuses, saying she's not interested in weak men. Oscar is disappointed as she tells him to finish his tea and leave soon after. The memory of his end hits him, and he refuses to have an ending like that again. With a renewed look in his eyes, our guy knows he can't just give up now. Isabel then asks for more tea, and a servant golem appears with the teapot in hand. Our protagonist is a bit surprised to see a service golem there, but using his sharp senses, he begins to analyze the metal creature, and he soon notices that the golem's internal circuits seem to be malfunctioning. He then stands up and warns Isabel that there's something wrong with the golem. She ignores him, thinking he's just trying to get attention, but the creature starts to shake. Suddenly, the golem short circuits and dumps the hot tea right on her head. Our hero yells Isabel's name, completely shocked by what just happened. He runs to help her and asks if she's okay while offering assistance. The camera focuses on the golem's shoulder, showing the completely faulty circuit. Isabel is in shock and realizes the circuits in the right shoulder have seized up. Our hero then grabs a handkerchief and helps Isabel wipe the hot tea from her arm. She then asks, completely shocked, how he knew the golem was going to malfunction. He says the mana flow looked strange, and she questions if he can see mana. A memory of the green, hatted mage he met flashes in his mind. He remembers her saying that mana is invisible and confirms to Isabel that he can see it. The woman then understands that's why he was able to break through her barrier. Our protagonist remembers his life as a swordsman and all his experience, and thinks that maybe this ability comes from his swordsman's instincts. Or maybe it's the talent that the mysterious mage talked about before he was taken out. Suddenly, Isabel stands up and calls him by name, leaving our guy surprised. With a confident smile, she says she will teach him how to use mana. He's confused, but she reaffirms that she still doesn't like incompetent men. However, she admits that he managed to pique her interest and extends her hand to him. Our protagonist then smiles, relieved and happy about the new opportunity. The two then seal the deal with a firm and decisive handshake. The scene changes, and the lesson begins with Isabel using a chalkboard. She explains that he has the wrong idea because mana is already being absorbed. Our hero then asks how he can make the mana flow through his circuits. She draws a diagram and says that mana only flows when there's a formula to receive it. Our guy is curious and asks what exactly this so-called formula is. With a smile, she shows him a magic paper with a specific spell drawn on it. Our hero gets super excited and asks what spell it is, but she keeps it a mystery. Isabel then instructs him to visualize the power in his body and pour it into the formula. Our protagonist accepts the challenge right away and says he'll do his best. However, the woman thinks that this task takes at least a month to complete, but she considers that if his talent for seeing mana is real, perhaps our guy could finish it all in just half a month. He then repeats the instructions to himself, trying to understand what to do. Our hero soon realizes it's like refining his sword QI and focuses his mind. With his eyes closed, he concentrates completely on his inner self to feel it. In his mental space, he can visualize his own body and the flow of energy, and with a smile, he finally finds the mana circulating inside him. The energy glows brightly, and he prepares for the next step of the process. He then extends his hand and directs all the power into the magic paper on the floor. Suddenly, Isabel's eyes widen in pure surprise at what she sees. Our protagonist opens his eyes and realizes the mana is already on the paper. It's explained that mastering magic is a slow process, like learning to walk again. Isabel's jaw is on the floor at the speed with which he managed to do it. After all, even the strongest mages in the world take time to master mana. Our hero then looks up at the sky and sees the result of his first spell. Isabel then approaches our hero, who is admiring the fireworks in the sky. She can't believe he managed to master mana in a single attempt. And she immediately remembers how he knew her golem was going to have a problem earlier. The woman wonders if he can see mana, but knows that doesn't explain everything. Looking at the reflection in his eyes, one thing becomes very clear to her. Without a doubt, our protagonist is a genius with an absurd amount of talent. Meanwhile, our guy says in amazement that this is finally real magic. Suddenly, Isabel calls out to him with a huge, excited smile on her face. She says it was incredible and that no one in history has ever done something like that. However, our hero cuts her off and says that it's not good enough. With a serious look, he seems quite dissatisfied with the spell's result and says it's not beautiful, remembering the magic that enchanted him in his childhood. That memory was the reason he always wanted to follow this path. To him, magic is something special, and what he did doesn't even come close. He then points to the paper and shows a specific part of the magic formula and says the mana flow there felt strange, just like the golems from before. Our guy asks for her opinion, leaving her completely flustered and confused. At that moment, he realizes he didn't just want to become any old mage. In fact, our protagonist wants to use a perfect and very beautiful magic. Isabel is surprised and says that if something is bothering him, he can just rewrite the formula. Our guy is completely shocked and excited by the possibility. He then asks Isabel how he can rewrite the magic formula. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a mysterious man walks down a hallway. With a very serious expression, he seems to be looking for someone important. He soon finds the bullies who got their butts kicked by our hero earlier. The man, named Mista, approaches and asks what happened to them. The boys are terrified and try to say it wasn't their fault, but Mista insists, asking again what happened with a cold stare. Fear takes over the guys, who don't know what to do or how to explain. One of them then starts telling Mista about the beating they took. The man's jaw drops as he listens to the unbelievable story. He can't believe Oscar managed to beat their leader in that state. He then tells the boys to take care of their friend so he can recover well. The two of them agree immediately, out of fear, and bow to him. Mista then looks up at the sky and thinks the time has finally come. With a smile, he says it's time to give the boy the sword Q. Back with Isabel and Oscar, they are in a library filled with books. Our hero is amazed and says he didn't know formulas were so deep. She says that knowledge is needed to use magic, and that this is normal. Isabel then praises his instincts and offers her books for him to study. With a smile, she points to her head and tells him to take as many books as he wants. However, when Isabel turns around, our protagonist has vanished into thin air. A moment later, our hero reappears with a huge pile of books in his arms. She is shocked, and he just says she told him to grab as many as he wanted. Isabel is speechless, but then she suddenly remembers something very important. With a serious expression, She says she needs to give our guy a warning and explains that he is now officially a mage with mana in his circuits. Because of this, Isabel warns him to be very careful with the sword QI. The scene then cuts back to Mista, who has plans to give this power to our hero, and the woman finishes her warning by saying that if he mixes the two powers, it'll be lights out for him. From a hilltop, the protagonist looks down at the village of Eisen, which brings back deep memories of his difficult past. With a thoughtful look, the young knight reflects on everything he lived through before getting this chance to go back in time. Entering a room, he finds his father lying in a bed, looking very weak and frail from an illness. The old man opens his eyes and recognizes his son, who he hadn't seen in a long time, standing right there in front of him. At that moment, the man asks the boy to come closer so they can have a more private conversation. Touching the young man's arm, the patriarch comments on the incredible talent he always knew his heir possessed from a young age. Then, the father questions if forbidding the use of magic in the past was truly the right decision for the hero's future. Feeling a weight on his chest, the young man remembers the constant pressure he was under to follow only the path of the blade. But now, with a new opportunity, he decides he will no longer bow his head to the wishes of other people. With that, the boy firmly holds the envelope from the Magic Academy, for he knows this is his true destiny. Before the grand gates of the institution, the time traveler observes the imposing and magical architecture of the place. He is fully determined to get the necessary authorization to finally study what he has always truly loved. Walking down a dark hallway, we see a mysterious man standing imposingly near a lit torch. The man notices the boy's presence and asks in a serious tone if he has any urgent business to discuss. Without hesitating, the protagonist holds out the invitation and asks for a signature to make his entry into the School of Mages official. The two stand face to face as the atmosphere in the hall grows tense because of that completely unexpected request. Surprised by his attitude, the man questions why something so important couldn't have waited for a calmer moment. His eyes widen as he realizes the young man isn't joking and notices that his determination is stronger than before. With a confident smile on his face, the boy shows the open document, ready to follow the path he himself has chosen. Unable to accept it, the tutor puts a hand to his head and asks why he chose magic when he was born for the sword. Oscar faces his father and asks if he remembers when he talked about wanting to use magic as a kid, but the older man downplays the subject, gripping his sword tightly. Just then, he points at the boy and says that it was just a meaningless childhood whim. That word awakens a painful memory in the hero, who remembers the oppression he suffered because of his dream. The hand on his chest symbolized the barrier that was put up, stopping him from following the path he so badly wanted. Back in the present, an electric aura explodes from the boy's body, who says that to his father it was just a whim. At this, the sword master becomes furious and shouts, asking what kind of unfunny joke this was. He then questions if the young man is saying he managed to master mana, while the boy remains calm and serious. The protagonist smiles slightly and says he didn't think he could convince him any other way. Furious, the man asks what he intends to convince him of with that sudden display of power. He says he heard the boy defeated his brothers without using sword energy, showing his great talent. The boy replies that he understands that, but the tutor yells, "No," and tells him to listen to his words carefully. He insists that if his son becomes a swordsman, he will find guaranteed success in the future that awaits him. Our protagonist says that his father's assessment is probably correct, but there is a catch. He then adds that achieving success doesn't necessarily mean finding true happiness in life. The two stand still in the hall at a stalemate, as neither side seems willing to back down from their decision. And so, the man puts a hand to his face, seeming to finally understand his heir's point of view. However, his expression turns dark, and he thinks that there's still time to undo that choice. The boy notices the change in the tutor's face, and a bead of sweat runs down his own due to the tension. The swordsman then reminds him of the danger of mixing the two powers, and what happens when they flow together. With that, the man threatens that if the boy follows the wrong path, he'll put his spirit back in its place the hard way. With the blade in hand, the tutor says that even if he doesn't accept it now, one day the young man will be thankful for this decision. But the protagonist firmly replies that this day will never come, because he knows what he wants for himself. At that moment, he remembers his tragic end in his past life and his father's passing, which he doesn't want to happen again. Looking on with a melancholic air, he confirms to himself that the day of thanks never actually came. The sword master then tosses his weapon aside and tells the hare to go get his own sword to fight. With a challenging gesture, the man says he will at least wait that long to make it a fair fight. The time traveler then closes his eyes, and when he opens them again, his expression shows a new determination. He then holds up the letter and reminds his father that he is a mage now and no longer needs a sword to defend himself. The envelope with the Magic Academy seal represents the new life the boy is choosing for himself. In a symbolic act, the boy throws the invitation into the fire, burning the paper and his chance to enter the academy. The young man's unexpected action leaves the tutor completely shocked and confused about what's happening. With a defiant look, the hero tells his guide, Brian, to go ahead and try to put his spirit back in its place. Brian seems to accept the challenge and begins to walk slowly toward his disciple with a serious look. He then releases his purple aura and warns the boy not to get cocky just because he handled a little pressure. In a swift movement, the master charges forward with his energy-covered blade, ready to put an end to the boy's boldness. The protagonist, however, remains calm as he can sense attacks with energy as if he were holding them. This makes him remember his training since he was little, when he learned to master his senses for battle. The reflection in the hero's eye shows the tutor's attack coming his way, but he is fully prepared. With that, a flash of purple and white fills the hall, indicating that the confrontation between the two has finally begun. The sword master attacks with a strike of purple energy, but the young man manages to dodge with great agility. Still on the ground, the boy says that the swordsman he admired most as a role model was, without a doubt, his own father. At this, the man approaches and says the boy talks too much, but he gets up, ready for whatever comes next. Then the tutor praises his dodge and says that no one in the guild could do the same without using sword energy. The protagonist stares at him seriously while the older man asserts that his talent for the sword is the real deal. Because of this, the swordsman says he will bet on a single chance and tells the boy to accept his energy at that moment. The hero reminds his father that he was the one who said he would put him in line with a good lesson. With a smile on his face, the boy asks if he's suggesting breaking that promise just because he can't land a hit. The master is left speechless by the boy's audacity and calls him a fool for his defiant attitude. At that moment, the young man explains that just as talent is everything to his father, he also has something important. Holding a kind of feather, the protagonist says there is something he cannot give up, no matter what. The tutor then questions what this important thing could be and asks if, by any chance, it's the sword. With a confident smile, the boy reveals that the object is actually a magic staff, to everyone's surprise. He adds that it's just a beginner's model, but his eyes show great determination. A memory of Isabel comes up, saying that knowledge is needed to use magic, and he reflects on this. Back in the present, the hero holds his staff and thinks that at this very moment, his father has no idea what's coming, and indeed, the older man has no clue what the boy is about to do to prove his point. Without a second thought, the swordsman leaps into the air to deliver a powerful attack against the opponent on the ground. But the boy's eyes widen as he sees a bluish light that seems to analyze every move of the attack. This light traces the path of several strikes around the protagonist, who can now see everything clearly. With a slight smile, the time traveler prepares his counter attack against his father's charge. He then turns with the staff in hand to execute the plan he had in mind since the start of the fight. The sword master's blade comes in full force, but the boy manages to defend against the blow in an unexpected way. With his eyes focused, He prepares for the next step of his strategy to win without hurting anyone. In a quick and precise move, the boy manages to disarm his opponent and now holds his sword. At that moment, he remembers the first magic he ever saw in his life, when he was just a dreaming child. It was the same magic he saw repeatedly in his dreams, the one that inspired him to follow this path. A magic he so desired and pictured in his mind, called spark or spiza in his language. He then recalls his mother in a rocking chair, surrounded by that magical and comforting light. Back in the present, the tutor is completely shocked and speechless at what his son has managed to do. Bright sparks of light explode around the man, who tries to shield himself from the spell's intense glow. He puts a hand to his face and complains about that magic which, despite being beautiful, was blinding his vision. With his eyes glowing blue, the protagonist approaches from behind, taking advantage of his adversary's distraction. The swordsman then yells furiously and asks if the young man's intention was to blind him with that light show. But the boy simply replies, no, and in a surprising move, throws the sword far across the hall. The blade falls and sticks into the stone floor, ending the armed confrontation between father and son for good. In the sword's reflection, we see the two standing still as the tension in the air slowly begins to fade. The hero then explains that he believed his father would fight based on presence alone, without needing his sight. With a hand on his neck, the man realizes the first spell was a distraction and questions what the goal was. The boy then says that hiding his true intention among several feats was something his own father taught him. Defeated, the swordsman puts a hand to his face, unable to believe what just happened there in the hall. He then says he can vouch for his son's talent with the sword, but questions him about the path of magic. The man asks who in the world will vouch for his talent in the arcane arts, which are so uncertain, but with a calm smile, the young man replies that he simply showed the path he wants to follow. The protagonist then asks if his father became a swordsman because someone vouched for his talent. This question makes the tutor remember a conversation from the past that changed his way of seeing things. In his memories, he questioned whether his son should pursue the sword or magic in the future. Sitting next to his pregnant wife, he believed the boy would have a talent for the blade, but his wife, smiling, reminds him that he only chose the sword because he thought it was cool when he was younger. She then says they don't have to choose for him because the path is his son's and the decision must be his. Back in the present, the sword master says he thought the boy would become a sword saint. He turns to leave, but the protagonist calls out to him, seeming confused by his sudden reaction. The man starts walking, and the young man follows him, not understanding why he is pulling away like that. Then the tutor bends down and picks up the recommendation letter the hero had thrown into the fire earlier. His father's action leaves the time traveler completely surprised and utterly confused. With a smile on his face, he holds the letter and says he won't be able to sign it with that feather. The scene then changes to the large and imposing Magic Academy, where new students are arriving. Someone reads a letter and comments that this year's freshmen seem to be a very talented group. A woman with glasses mentions that besides important nobles, there are other big names arriving. She reveals, to everyone's surprise, that even the imperial princess will be enrolling in the academy. With an impressed look, the instructor comments that she has already mastered both basic magic and her family's hereditary power. Holding the documents, the man shows a satisfied smile, as he knows the level of the new students is extremely high. Meanwhile, in the main hall, someone asks if there is any problem with the preparations for the start of classes. The man then states that having class bloodlines entering the institution is very gratifying for everyone. At this moment, the young hero dedicates himself to writing in his diary to record every important detail of his new life. Standing in front of the guild's dormitory, the sword master watches the activity with his arms crossed, deep in thought. He maintains a firm pose, but his face holds the tranquility of someone who has fulfilled his duty of guiding his successor. As the days went by, the sound of footsteps on the floor shows that 6 months have passed since that great duel. Time flew by in an absurd way, and the protagonist walks through the courtyard feeling that the preparation ended very quickly. Approaching the tutor, the boy hears that there are many other students who have trained their whole lives in the arcane arts. The veteran states that he doesn't have much right to speak, but asks his son to be strong and never give up on his choice. Hearing this advice, the boy's eyes widen as he realizes how much his father truly cares about him. With a smile on his face, the young man jokes that no one in the world can be more intimidating than his own father. With a smile, he shows that he has finally accepted his here's destiny. With that, the time traveler says he is leaving and begins to walk away while the older man watches him go. Holding the official paper, the boy sees Brian's signature, which finally confirms his admission into his dream school. In the middle of the crowd, the hero follows his path, knowing that the real challenge begins now, within those walls. He looks up with great confidence, feeling ready to face any mystery the Academy might offer. Then the giant gates swing open, releasing an intense light that marks the beginning of an epic journey for the new mage. Before him appears the imposing Magic Academy, which rises majestically among the mountains in all its glory. The atmosphere is festive, with several students wearing their wizard hats and shooting colorful sparks into the air to celebrate the start of classes. Just below, we see a band of small gnome musicians playing drums and horns to liven up the reception for all the new students. Looking up at the sky, the boy notices other students flying on brooms with capes that look like squirrel tails in a very fun way. Completely amazed, the young man comments that the atmosphere at the Kirk Imperial Academy is very different from the old school for swordsmen. The little musicians continue their rhythmic performance on the ground, while the protagonist observes every curious detail of this new world. Crouching down, the hero analyzes the magical beings and wonders if they are some type of golem, or if they work by some other unknown principle. Just then, a female voice warns that if he keeps wasting time like this, he's going to be late to register. He's startled to see as abandoning, right there in front of him with a confident smile and an imposing pose. Walking together, the boy states that he trained a lot and now feels much stronger and more prepared than he was 6 months ago. With a challenging look, the girl says she's eager to see his progress and encourages him to try and surprise her again with his power. Pointing around, the boy notices the courtyard is getting empty and asks where all the other students went. The redhead explains that the others are probably taking the placement exam to try to get into the institution's first class. She details that newcomers are normally divided into 2 different classes according to the amount of mana each one possesses. However, there is a special category above all the others, reserved only for the young people who are considered true child prodigies. This test serves as a strict filter to find the greatest talents through a purple magic circle that emanates a very powerful energy. But to the hero's surprise, his friend suggests that he should avoid this higher-level exam to avoid trouble on his first day. Isabel states that every student who manages to get into this elite class is considered a true monster in terms of arcane combat. In a serious tone, she says that everyone there are elite nobles, trained from birth, and always surrounded by the purest and most advanced magic. Instead of being scared, the protagonist breaks into a huge smile, realizing that there he can finally learn very advanced level magic. Noticing the boy's over the top excitement, the girl puts a hand to her head, realizing that giving him advice is a completely useless task. The hero says that if she's curious, she should go see what he's going to do with her own eyes. Arriving at the courtyard, they find other students watching the selection exam for the Academy's first class. One of the participants casts water bubbles to defend against several magic blades flying in his direction. The water attack manages to destroy the projectiles, and the student celebrates his small victory with a smile. Observing the scene, the protagonist understands that the test consists of hitting a target using attack spells. But at that moment, he senses that he is being watched by several shadowy figures with glowing eyes in the crowd. Suddenly, A young man with white hair catches his attention and stares at him with a look of superiority. This is Zazan of House Gerosis, and he says that this place is not for a commoner like our hero. With an arrogant tone, the noble tells the boy to leave the area immediately, and without question, the time traveler calmly replies that he heard any freshman could take part in the exam. Zazan and his friends laugh at the boy's audacity for thinking he has the right to be there with them. Just then, the protagonist remembers Isabel's warning about the monsters of the first class. He finally understands that anyone who isn't nobility is completely looked down upon in that group. Out of patience, the platinum-haired boy shoves the hero aside and tells him to shut up and just watch. An instructor with a scale-topped staff prepares to evaluate the next participant in the selection test. Zazan smiles arrogantly as several magic blades are launched for him to defend against. The noble then says that the first class is only for those who have trained in magic since childhood, and that he'll show them the difference. With his eyes glowing, he prepares a powerful ice spell to freeze everything around him. In an instant, gigantic pillars of ice take over the entire arena, showcasing his immense power. The crowd is left completely speechless and shocked by the display of magic on such a grand scale. With wide eyes, the hero is surprised to see the scale of that noble's magic. The crowd then goes wild, praising the incredible power of the famous ice house, Gerosis. Other students comment that this wasn't even all the powers Zazan truly possessed. With a smug smile, he says the boy now realizes there's no place for him there. The protagonist admits that the magic is impressive, as it's the result of a lifetime of dedication. But he then thinks that despite all that, it's a huge waste of power and talent. The platinum-haired boy becomes furious at the comment and asks in an angry tone, "What did you say?" Ignoring the taunt, the hero simply walks into the arena to take his own test. At that moment, he remembers his past and how hard he worked to master the sword from a young age. With a confident smile, the boy gives his thanks, as the noble's demonstration has made him more confident. Zazan's friends start to laugh and make fun of the feather staff the protagonist is holding. They comment that it's impossible to aim at anything with such a simple and cheap item. The noble is confused and wonders why that commoner gained confidence from his magic. He thinks that his magic should have been perfect and doesn't understand what the other boy means. After all, he is from House Gerosis and believes his ice magic has no flaws. With a hand on his face, the opponent wonders why he is even taking this boy seriously. The instructor prepares to launch the magic blades for the next participant in the test. She thinks that this year's freshmen are as talented as the rumors had suggested, and with that powerful magic, she believes that Zan will be the freshman's representative. But even so, a bead of sweat on her face shows that she has some doubt about it. The instructor wonders what the boy has been doing all this time, just standing there without reacting. From the crowd, one of the nobles yells for him to give up already if he can't even aim properly. But the hero thinks to himself that the boy isn't lost, but waiting for something important. With a focused gaze, he analyzes the trajectory of all the blades flying in his direction. The magic projectiles cross in the air at high speed, creating a very difficult challenge. Suddenly, the young man's feather staff begins to glow with an intense fire energy. Then a magic circle of fire forms, and he casts the spell called Pillsphere Fireball. A powerful beam of fire shoots across the arena in a straight line, hitting the target with precision. In the blink of an eye, all 5 blades fall to the ground with a hole through their centers. The instructor is left completely shocked and speechless by what she has just witnessed. Someone in the crowd comments that it was so fast, you could barely see him hit the targets. Zazan's friends laugh and say that he failed because the holes in the targets are tiny. They continue their mockery, saying that to get in, he needed better magic. The platinum-haired noble says he was curious to see the boy's magic, but seems disappointed. With that, he turns his back on the hero and says that this was just a waste of time. The protagonist then approaches the evaluator and asks with a serious face if he failed. The woman is surprised by the question and quickly denies it, stuttering a little from nerves. She confirms that he hit all 5 targets and passed the test without a doubt. The boy is confused by the answer and asks why he passed if the damage was low. The instructor then questions him why he didn't destroy the targets one by one if he was so capable. The instructor then asks if what he did was just a lucky shot, because it seemed too easy. The protagonist thinks for a moment and admits that his opponent's magic was truly impressive. But at the same time he was watching that display of power, he had a completely different idea. He explains that using so much mana in a situation, the instructor is shocked, wondering if that was really a waste of energy. With that, the young man explains that in a real battle against monsters, he prefers to conserve his mana. The woman completely understands and apologizes for interrupting his walk. He then continues on his way through the academy's streets, observing everything around him. At this moment, the narrator mentions he had the courage to wait and the precision to hit the target. The evaluator realizes the magic used wasn't flashy, but was extremely efficient. But the protagonist shows more potential than any other student in that place. As he walks, he sees other students flying on brooms and enjoying the sunny day. Then the boy reflects on how the teachers there are truly incredible mages. At that instant, the young man continues on his path, feeling the festive atmosphere of the institution. But suddenly, a firm footstep echoes on the ground, making the hero stop immediately. Startled, the dark-haired boy looks back, wondering who the person watching him could be. The mysterious voice comments that he has good eyes and a sharp intuition for noticing presences. At this, a figure leaps in front of the student, who is left confused by what's happening. The stranger lands calmly and says it's a pleasure to meet the new and talented mage. It's then revealed that the man is Balsamus, the great headmaster of this prestigious academy. At this moment, the protagonist bows as a sign of respect and apologizes for anything. But the young man's expression changes completely when he notices something strange about the school's leader. He's in shock, his eyes widening as he sees a bizarre and frightening vision. At this, a hooded figure with red eyes appears in his mind like a dark warning. He extends his hand and gently asks the newcomer to greet him politely. With this, the young man hesitates, staring at the open palm with a certain apprehension in his eyes. Then the two shake hands, but a dark energy seems to emanate from this simple contact. The hero is startled, feeling that something very dangerous is hidden beneath that friendly smile. Then, a massive whirlwind appears out of nowhere and starts destroying everything around the pair. With the impact, the young man is thrown far away while trying to keep his balance in the middle of the windstorm. But the old man asks if he has good eyes or just an unusually keen intuition. He floats majestically, showing that his elemental control is on an absurd level. At that moment, the dark-haired boy gets furious and asks if the headmaster came here just to take him down. But the master just scoffs, asking if he really thinks he could win with that twig. Then the elder strikes his staff on the ground, releasing a magical pressure that crushes the surroundings. With that, a storm prison is conjured to trap the boy in a circle of wind. The protagonist realizes he's cornered and has nowhere left to escape. He observes the powerful barrier and understands he'll have to fight seriously to make it out of there. At that instant, the young man focuses his vision and decides it's time to show his true trump card. Then he activates a magic circle of flames, using his small feather to channel the power. With a shout, he fires a burning projectile of fire that cuts through the air toward his opponent. But the attack is so fast it catches the veteran by surprise in the middle of his own flight. He is shocked to realize the damage caused by the boy was real and effective. At this, the hero maintains total focus as the flames explode and light up the entire courtyard. Balsamus observes that the young man aimed directly at the caster instead of just trying to block the magic. The headmaster lets out a light laugh while admiring the dark-haired boy's audacity in the middle of a fight. But the hero remains on guard, wondering what the man intends with this provocation. Then the young man prepares for any new attack as the wind blows strongly around him. With that, the master asks if he's out of breath yet, warning that he would have been done for if he hadn't reacted. He stops fighting and questions the true purpose of that sudden and dangerous test. At this moment, the elder explains that for many here, magic is seen only as a great privilege. He mentions that those who stand out too much end up being targets of envy from arrogant nobles. The headmaster confesses that he misjudged the boy's true potential and is now very impressed. With this, the protagonist understands that being too talented can attract powerful and cruel enemies. But the veteran confirms there are extremists who hate seeing commoners with such incredible powers. The young man listens attentively and realizes his journey at the academy will be more difficult than expected. His thoughts then return to those shadowy figures who seek to eliminate anyone with great talent. He then demands to know who these people are that pose such a great threat to his future. But the elder gets serious and says that knowing their identities could put the young man in immediate danger. So Balsamus advises that the dark-haired boy first needs to gain strength to protect himself. With that, the hero reflects on the need to become unbeatable to survive in this place. He envisions the immense power he'll have to face and feels the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. At this, the boy admits that if the headmaster were truly an enemy, he would have been finished by now. At this moment, the master just observes the young man, knowing he carries an extraordinary destiny. He closes his eyes for a moment, reflecting on the heavy words he just heard. With that, the young man faces the headmaster and notices the master has a very bright item on his chest. The necklace gleams in a unique way, showing it's an object charged with pure mystical energy. The young man then asks what the mysterious pendant the elder wears with such pride is. The veteran explains that the jewel is the official proof that he has achieved the rank of a magic saint. At this moment, the dark-haired boy understands that this title is the highest level, just like the sword saint was. He realizes both paths are legendary, but now he seeks to master arcane power completely. The headmaster then tosses a small object to the boy, saying it will be very useful soon. The hero catches the piece in the air and notices he received a special type of badge from the institution. Then the master says goodbye, warning the boy not to lose that valuable item for anything in the world. But the boy just watches the trail of wind left by the master as he vanishes into the blue sky. At that instant, the hero reflects on the perfect mana control the headmaster showed in the fight. He focuses on the object in his palm and understands it's not the time to just stand around admiring things. With that, the young man dives into his studies in the enormous library to learn everything about this world. He spends his days practicing formulas and creating new spells alongside his demanding instructor. But a terrible vision of his tragic end flashes in his mind, reminding him of the real danger. The young man clenches his fist tightly, vowing that this time he won't be caught by any assailant. He knows he must surpass his former self, who was once the greatest swordsman on the entire continent. The scene then changes to a giant room where several students are gossiping about the semester's news. The students comment in surprise that a commoner managed to get into the first class for the first time. The arrogant noble remarks that it's trivial and that a commoner will soon be discarded from this place. We then see someone walking through the classroom doors as the atmosphere becomes heavy and tense. But the white-haired young man observes the others, whispers and maintains his superior posture. With that, his eyes widen as he senses a completely different presence approaching. He stands up in surprise, noticing the protagonist is walking with great confidence. But the platinum-haired boy wonders who this guy is that has changed so much in so little time. Then he stares at the hero entering the room and can't understand what happened there. At that moment, the dark-haired boy remembers the headmaster's advice to focus on gaining power to protect himself. He then appears meditating alone, feeling the energy flow calmly through his body. The narrator explains that releasing mana repeatedly makes the circuits stronger. With this constant training, the boy's absorption capacity increases at an absurd rate. The sun illuminates the protagonist's face, which shows a serenity worthy of an experienced master. He observes the view from the window while planning his next steps in this new school life. But the young man notices that the duration of his magic is slowly increasing with so much daily effort. The hero then awakens from his meditation in the room, feeling ready for any challenge. With that, he opens the door with determination and prepares to show his worth to the nobles. He walks, adjusting his gloves, and affirms that this is the first time he has truly wanted to be strong. At that instant, his rival observes the dark-haired boy from above, feeling annoyed by such an imposing presence. But the platinum-haired boy starts to sweat nervously, unable to comprehend this drastic change. He then stares at the boy's firm gaze and wonders what on earth happened to this commoner. The rival then realizes the protagonist is also in the room and feels very threatened. With that, the dark-haired boy continues to observe his surroundings and seems to notice something interesting. He sees a girl sitting alone and decides it's time to start making new friends. But a flowery bookmark falls to the floor, catching the hero's attention with its delicacy. He approaches calmly and picks up the object to return it gently to its owner. At that moment, the young man asks if the bookmark belongs to her and shows the item with a smile. The girl takes her gift back, showing sincere gratitude for such a thoughtful gesture. She smiles and thanks him as her eyes shine with happiness for getting the item back. He then comments that she seems to really like flowers, which makes her a little embarrassed. With the compliment, the girl remembers the mage with the green hat and is surprised by the resemblance. The two introduce themselves and immediately get along, indicating a new alliance is forming. But suddenly, a mysterious voice echoes in the room, saying it seems everyone has gathered. At this, all the students are startled and wonder where that imposing voice is coming from. They search the entire room, but can't find the source of that authoritative speech. Then a book opens by itself and begins to flip its pages in a magical and spooky way. The students watch the scene, not understanding what's happening as the book floats. But someone steps firmly on the floor, drawing everyone's attention to the center of the room. A woman with glasses then appears, revealing her name is Ruth, and she will be the class's teacher. She says that everyone there has proven their talent, which is why they were selected for the first class. The master then announces that next week, they will have real combat lessons against monsters. He smirks, showing he's looking forward to this newfield activity at the academy. But the boy clenches his fist, excited to have a chance to gain combat experience so soon. With that, the teacher explains that to ensure balance, groups of 5 will be formed. The students ask if the balancing will be based on each person's magical power, but the master says that this time the measure will be circuit performance, meaning mana capacity. At this moment, the protagonist and his new friend wonder how this measurement will be done. The instructor lets out a mysterious laugh, showing she has a card up her sleeve for this task. She then reveals that she has already finished the measurement, and a circle of golden light shines throughout the room. With that, all the students are startled to see orbs of light floating above their heads. The young woman with glasses observes the phenomenon, trying to understand what that powerful magic represents. Then Ruth explains that the intensity of those spheres indicates each person's total mana capacity. The platinum-haired rival has a very strong glow, proving his level is quite high. Other students also show they have great potential for combat with advanced magic. The teacher is impressed, saying that several of them have master-level mana, which is rare. But she wonders what the result will be for the commoner, who surprised everyone in the selection exam. The classmates mock the boy, questioning if he really belongs in the first class. They whisper that a commoner will always be a commoner, and that no one will want to team up with him. The hero then realizes now is not the time to think about that, and focuses on what really matters. But suddenly, someone touches his shoulder, pulling him from his thoughts with a very delicate touch. Then the girl with the bookmark invites him to form a group and face the challenges together. He asks if she's sure, but the young woman says yes, because anyone who likes flowers can't be a bad person. But she says they first need to ask someone named Levin, leaving the hero confused by the situation. The young man is left wondering who this person named Levin is, who seems to be the leader. Then a red, Haired boy questions if they really want to put the newcomer in their group. He then says that protecting the weak is a duty of nobles, and seems to reluctantly accept the idea. As they walk, she asks how long he has been practicing magic, and the hero says it's been about 6 months. At that moment, other students pass by them, observing the new friendship that has formed in the class. With a smile, the boy asks to join the group, saying he would be very grateful for the opportunity. Meanwhile, we see the other students in the class also forming their own groups for the training. Then the redhead and the dark-haired boy stand face to face as the mood between them seems a bit tense. But the young woman is completely shocked, wondering how he learned so much in just 6 months. He then tells her not to worry, as nobles learn magic from a young age, so the difference is normal. With a smirk, the redhead says he'll take him along, but only as a baggage carrier. But the dark-haired boy replies that it's okay, as he's just happy to be able to join the group. As they walk down the hall, the girl asks how long the boy has been practicing magic. He then explains that he was lucky enough to find someone who could teach him during this time. With a serene look, the young man shows he is ready to prove his worth to everyone at the academy.